You've probably heard of the Kingdom of Dahomey, the mythical city of Ouida, the sacred throne of Abomi, or the fortified city of Notsé. Maybe you even know about the long migrations of the Ewe people, scattered between Ghana, Togo, and Benin. But what few people know is that all these stories, all these kingdoms, all these peoples find their source in a forgotten place, a sanctuary almost erased from memories, Tado. A name that is whispered in ancient narratives, a sacred, powerful, industrial and feared city. This is where kings, lineages, cults and exiles were born. Welcome to this new documentary of Togo's history from prehistoric times to the present day, episode 2. In this video, we're going to take a dive into the heart of the lost empire of the Aja, from Tado to the Ewe Diaspora. Let yourself be guided through the centuries, where the history of Togo, Benin and Ghana takes root, in an epic of conquests, revolts and revelations. Before we begin, let me tell you that episode 2 will be in 2 parts. The first will be about the revealed prehistoric origin of the Ewe and their way of life. And part B will speak of the Kingdom of Tado, its climax, decline and exodus of the Ewe people from Tado. If everything is understood, then let's start with part A. Before we dive into the daily life of the ancient kingdoms of the Ajitardo area, let's take a moment to return to a fundamental question. Where did the Ewe come from? According to their oral traditions, they descended from ancient Egypt.
Hold on a second, was Egypt actually black or white?
Depuis leur parcours d'Égypte dans la vallée de Libye, au bord du Nil, c'était là notre origine d'antan.
This narrative, passed down from generation to generation, claims that they left the Nile Valley to begin a long migration to the west, through Sudan, Chad, the Niger region, before finally reaching the Tado region, in the heart of present-day Togo. This tradition is not isolated. It resonates with the writings of Herodotus, a famous Greek historian born between 480 and 425 BC in Halicarnassus, Asia Minor. Considered the father of history, Herodotus was the first to take a rational and critical approach to the past, recounting the facts not as divine revelations, but as he understood them through his investigations and travels. Around 450 BC, he visited Egypt and dedicated the entire Book 2 of his work to it. This unique testimony gives us a direct look at ancient Egyptian society, their daily life, their religious rites, the great popular festivals, and the very structure of the country. His work, often confirmed by the frescoes of the temples and the bas-reliefs of the tombs, remains a valuable reference for Egyptologists today. Thanks to him, we have descriptions of a rare wealth about ancient Egyptian civilization. So Herodotus went to Kemet and tells us that the ancient Egyptians are Negroes. He uses Melacros to say black skin and Ulatrikis for kinky hair. The Colchidians are of Egyptian race. First, because they have black skin and frizzy hair. Book 2, page 104. Herodotus leaves no room for uncertainty, no approximation, for he writes, "I went to the city of Elephantine and saw with my own eyes." Book 2, page 29. Then comes the research of the historian Cheikh Anta Diop, who argues that ancient Egypt was a black civilization, mother of several African cultures.
Historians have always regarded Egypt, if you will, as a sort of separate part in Africa. They even forgot that Egypt is an African nation. By restoring Africa's past, he may have restored humanity's past as well.
It is indeed a paradox that this continent, which is the origin of human civilization, has been classified until recent decades as a sad continent that has contributed nothing to humanity. even though Africa is the cradle of human civilization.
People will jump when they hear this.
The tragedy of Africa is that the African man has not entered history enough. The African peasant, who, for millennia, has lived with the seasons, and whose ideal of life is to be in harmony with nature, knows only the eternal recurrence of time, marked by endless repetition of the same gestures and the same words. In this imaginary, where everything always starts over, there is no room for human adventure or the idea of progress. In this universe, where nature commands everything, man escapes the anxiety of history that grips modern man. But the African remains motionless in the midst of an immutable order, where everything seems to be written in advance. The African never leaps towards the future. It never occurs to him to break free from repetition to invent a destiny for himself.
It is Egypt that is the origin of science, medicine, astronomy, and all knowledge in antiquity. And the Greeks came to draw from Egyptian knowledge starting in the 6th century, around 525 BC. Cambyses too destroyed the Egyptian sovereignty, if you will. The Persians settled after them. The Greeks around 332 BC would settle, and then after them. This is the Hellenistic period. And after the Romans, the Black experienced a period of domination. He dominated the world, which is actually for certain until around 500 BC. This is the Egyptian, the general type of the Egyptian that was intended to be represented here, with the contrasts of color. Right after, there is the Indo-European, thus the specimen that represents all leucoderm races, whites, the type that was resistant to civilization at that time. And the third is the black from the rest of Africa, you see? Try to find a difference between the first and the third, it is solely the same type, and the writing says so too. And the last one on the left, it's the Semite.
All of this challenges the narratives spread by some Western Egyptologists and the biased translations of Herodotus's writings, as well as the representations conveyed by many Hollywood films that portray ancient Egypt and its pharaohs as white. These narratives have often contributed to the idea of inferiority to the white man in the African collective mindset. Although archaeological evidence is lacking to establish a formal link between the Ewe and ancient Egypt, migrations across the continent did indeed exist. And in a continent where memory lives through speech, these oral tales are much more than just folklore. They are the DNA of collective memory. Referring to these Ewe oral histories, it emerged that their journey from Egypt was long, eventful, and strategic. Moving west, they penetrated the desert plains of the Sahara, crossed Sudan, bypassing Lake Chad, facing various challenges and tribal conflicts. Then they reached the fertile lands of northern Nigeria, sometimes settling temporarily in cities like Kano or Katsina. These migrations lasted for centuries, by families, by clans, by following the stars, the rivers, and the words of the priests. Some stopped around Oyo, still in present-day Nigeria, or further southwest in Save in present-day Benin. Others continued on their way to Ife, and then to Ketu. Thus begins the period of the Ajitardo area. Between the rivers Volta and Weme, on a land blessed with Atlantic waters, and by the ancient gods, one of West Africa's most fascinating civilizations was born, the Ajitardo area.
Whoever speaks of Ajitardo speaks of the Ajitardo cultural area. And as everyone knows, all the other kingdoms that are derived from the kingdom of Tado still pledge allegiance to Tado. That is why we do continue to talk about the kingdom of Ajitardo. When we talk about the kingdom of Ajitardo, it shows that the other kingdoms are derived from Tado. It is not just about talking about the kingdom of Aja or the kings of the Aja people. No. The king of Tado or the king of Ajitardo is not merely the king of the Aja. He is the king of those who are derived from the cultural area, from the space, the culture area of Ajitardo, and that have as their mother root, Tado, in its originality.
The Aja are the third emigration. They came, the Aja, they were the last to come here. And it was from here that they dispersed. And that was what brought about the cultural area Ajitardo.
This land was the cradle of a people with exceptional destiny, the Aja, their cousins Ewe, Fon, Pula, etc. A story of legendary migrations, sacred kingdoms, and revolts. A story that shaped the soul of an entire people. The Ajitardo cultural area stretched between the Volta in the west and the Weme in the east, up to 200 kilometers inland. To the south, it embraced the Atlantic Ocean. This fertile territory was inhabited by people of Aja origin, hence the name Ajitardo, fusion of Aja, the people, and Tado, their sacred capital.
As for me, I call it the Ancestral Kingdom, the ancestral place of all the peoples who are straddling in the cultural area of Ajitardo, straddling Benin, Ghana, and Togo.
9 language groups coexisted there: Aja, Ewe, Fon, Ayizo, Pula, Gun, Gain, Sawe, and Fueda. Diverse peoples, but bound by a sister language, a common memory. Indeed, these linguistic distinctions are in fact only conventional. All these languages come from the Aja, and there remains a close intercomprehension between them. In the 12th century, according to tradition, the Aja ancestors migrated from the Yoruba country. A prince named Togbe Anyi from Oyo passed through Ketu before settling in Azanme, on the banks of the Mono, where Tado was born. The Yoruba called the people of Azanme the Benjamins.
Tado existed under the name Azanme. This is the name that was given to Tado before the arrival of the Aja. They came from Oyo, via Ketu before arriving at Tado. Tado was called Azanme.
In Azanme, they met 2 indigenous groups, the Alu, mystical blacksmiths, and the Azanu, political leaders.
When they arrived, at the time, Tado was going through problems. There were calamities, droughts. They had a bit of everything. And when the king who led his troops since Oyo said to the people who were there, he said to them, he can genuinely make these ills go away. So they asked him if he was sure. He replied yes, but on the condition that the locals take him as their new king to lead them.
An alliance was made. Indeed, Tado's traditions record that Azar, the leader of the Azano, only agreed to cede power to Togbe Anyi on condition that he take his 7 sons as ministers.
Well, they accepted, and they set conditions, provided that you take 7 of our sons as your ministers. And the pact was sealed. And when he was doing his Kabbalistic prayers, he uttered incantatory words in which he said Atawadomi. In Aja, Atawadomi meant, those misfortunes, those calamities that were occurring, they would be stepped over them.
Those are therefore chosen from the descendants of Azar, and form the clan of the Siko, while the kings, that is, the Anyigbafio, which means king of the land, are chosen from the lineage of Togbe Anyi. Togbe Anyi became king, but the Azanu imposed their 7 sons as ministers. Thus was born the state of Tado, where power was divided between the sacred king, the Anyigbafio.
Togbe Anyi, the king of the earth, is the one who protected the heritage of the Aja people.
And the great noble clans, the Tashinon, or great dignitaries.
The Tashinon are the priests. They were the locals who were in charge before the arrival of the Aja. They called themselves the people of Azanme. They also had their king before the arrival of Togbani, who appointed the first king. And from the distortion of the expression during the prayer, we ended up with Tado. And after the whites franchised it, we arrived at Tado. Ta, which means leg in Aja. And do, which means step over. So this is where the name Tado was born, that the misfortunes of the village are overcome.
But have you ever wondered what everyday life was like in the days of the Ajitardo area? In the villages of Tado or Notsé? Let's dive together into the intimacy of these ancient realms to discover the everyday life, the central role of women, and the economic dynamics that have shaped the destiny of an entire people. Daily life in the kingdoms of Aja and Ewe. Each village was structured in clan quarters with closed concessions where several generations lived. The head of the family lived in the main hut. Each wife had her own hut, and the children slept with their mother. In the center, a common living space was used to cook, discuss, pray to ancestors, and sometimes to do justice. In terms of food, yams, maize, cassava, and vegetables dominated the meals. This was supplemented with fish caught in the rivers, hunted game, and poultry raised at home. Clothing side. The men wore simple tunics called adewu, made of tree bark, eche. The women wore beautiful, colourful loincloths, tied at the waist, sometimes adorned with pearls for special occasions. Kings and nobles wore woven fabrics like the kente, proof of their rank. The beating heart of this civilization was craftsmanship. Blacksmiths, masters of fire, fashioned weapons, agricultural tools, and even traditional chakawim rifles. Their knowledge was sacred, often passed down from father to son. The potters of Tegbe in Notsé were famous. Their vases, bowls, and pipes decorated with symbolic motifs served both daily life and ritual. Weaving cotton dyed with indigo or ruku produced lively and identity-based fabrics, worn during rites, funerals, or royal festivals. In the Ajitardo area, women were not in retreat. They were the pillars of society. In a context of polygamy, each woman managed her home, her house, her children. They conveyed culture, domestic education, and family traditions. In some Aja Ewe regions, the inheritance passed through the mother, a discreet but profound power. Economically, they controlled the markets. They sold salt, pottery, fabrics, sometimes even iron products. And spiritually, some women were priestesses, seers, healers. In Notsé, popular memory evokes the resistance women who, fleeing King Aga Kali, carried their children and perpetuated the Ewe identity across borders. Among them, the Puwala salt merchants were particularly successful. From the salt marshes, they supplied the entire hinterland using canoes, becoming powerful and independent. The economy was based on agricultural self-sufficiency. They grew yam, corn, millet, oil palm. Iron tools produced locally opened up the forest and increased yields. The king, Anyigbafio, had to ensure good harvests through rain and fertility rituals. Gradually, exchanges gained momentum. First barter, then the arrival of the Kori in the 16th century as currency. Key business networks were formed. Tado specialized in exporting iron to the coast. Notsé became an area of the trade for slaves, pottery, cereals towards Atapame and Keita. In Gran Popo, the Plagans excelled in selling pearls, salt, and fabrics. But the shadow of the slave trade would upset everything. Beginning in the 17th century, coastal kingdoms like Alada or Porto Novo began selling prisoners for firearms, alcohol, and iron bars. This destabilized the old balance. Inland kingdoms such as Tado or Notsé lost their influence to coastal powers and settlers. Yes, this civilization was bright. Its agriculture, craftsmanship, women's economic power, and spirituality made it a vital center of South Togo. But the Atlantic slave trade, wars, colonizations have erased whole swathes of this memory. Now let's move on to part B that will tell you about the Kingdom of Tado, its climax, decline, and exodus of the Ewe people. Don't forget to subscribe and share this video around you. Together, let's expose the truth about the history of Togo and Africa. Because re-educating our peoples also means restoring their dignity, their memory, and their future.